became the enemy of the state and were picked up in the middle of the night. Most people ended up in Budapest in a place we only knew by its address as Andrássy út 60, which today is a museum called a House of Terror. Most of them were never seen again. My family set out to make the desperate crossing ourselves, but my uncle, in fear for my life, put his foot down and told my parents that they would have to leave me behind. Returning to our home, we found it empty. Dishes, furniture, clothes, everything was gone. We had nothing left but the clothes on our backs. After 2 years of living with my uncle, the government assigned us a room in an army barrack where we shared the showers and the toilets with 50 workmen. We were marked and our future was dismal. Under those conditions, my parents would forever work for the bare minimum, and the government would control where we live, how often we move, how much education I would be allowed. By the time I was 15 years old, we were moved 11 times, and I attended 6 schools in 8 years. In 1963, the government, feeling the possibility of unrest, gave amnesty to all the freedom fighters. To show how open we suddenly became, they gave out a handful of passports to people to visit their relatives in the West. My mother received a passport to visit my brothers, who by now made their way to America. After her return the following year, my father had permission to visit my brothers also. He never set foot on Hungarian soil again. When he was late returning to Hungary, we were threatened with jail and work camp if we didn't convince my father to come home. On his return, at best, he would have been jailed for life. With my father in the West, my mother and I were harassed and questioned by the police regularly. Realizing the limitations that will be placed on me because of the sins of my brothers and now my father, I wanted to leave the country. After we applied for passports, we were followed by agents, and the police came to get us frequently to parade us through the city to the police station for questioning. This continued for 4 years. Between Christmas and New Year's in 1968, the police came for me. The chief wanted to see me alone for questioning. He put a paper in front of me and demanded I sign it without allowing me time to read it. I refused. While the chief was screaming at me for my defiance, I read the paper in which I was going to give up my Hungarian citizenship. I took the pen and I wrote on the bottom margin that under no circumstance am I willing to give up my Hungarian citizenship, and then I signed the paper. Red in the face, he was covered in sweat as he continued to scream at me when my mother, who was a very tiny woman, came busting through the door. Looking confused, almost disoriented, he told us we were both leaving, stating that the country will be better off without us, and to our astonishment, he gave us a month to leave the country. On my way out, he grabbed my arm and he spun me around to face him. His last words to me stuck with me to this day. He stuttered, "We do not need your kind. You are the type that can cause revolutions." According to his words, I think he was a wise man. I am an immigrant. In recent years, most Americans think of immigrants as poor people, undereducated, in search of a financially better life, coming to the United States for the opportunity of work. Today that is mostly correct, but going back a few decades, immigrants came to America for entirely different reasons. We were seeking liberty. Poor we could deal with. That was the smallest of our problems. We came with broken wings and broken spirits from lands controlled by tyrants, where we had no hope for a brighter future. And we, the lucky ones who did get out, came here to take refuge under the protective comfort of the Constitution. We did not come to change America. We came with respect for its laws, language, and we are proud to pledge allegiance to the flag. We loved our homeland, yet we fully dedicated our allegiance to a foreign land we did not know. We came deeply thankful for the sanctuary of its freedom and the graciousness of its people for allowing us the privilege to live here. Most immigrants struggle for years to enter this country legally. Struggle to learn English, but in time we adopt this country as our own. We learn its ways, we honor the blood that is shed for this soil, and we jealously guard over and protect the freedoms of this country. My 3 children were born here in freedom with the birthright to speak their minds, form opinions, and dare to dream of limitless possibilities, knowing that if they are willing to focus and work hard enough, anything is within their reach. It is all up to them, not the government, to determine their futures. Through the decades, I watched the very freedoms I would have swam an ocean for slowly recede, little by little taken from us through more government control, programs, and regulations, with the promise the government will take care of us. All governments that try to take care of their citizens have failed. The socialist communist system cannot afford itself. Eventually, even the rich will run out of money. These systems did not fail because they didn't do it right. It cannot be done because money can only be made in a free society. When we clearly understand the history of socialism and communism, it should make us scream in protest, and it should cause us to act. And act we must. To fail to realize the government's misuse of its powers and not to act is a crime against our nation. If we do not act, the destiny of Eastern Europe will be ours, and we will be forced to stand in shame in front of our children and our grandchildren, whose freedoms we so easily betrayed. Too many in our country are becoming comfortable with the word socialism. It seems a perfect equal system for all, a Shangri-La if you will, if not realizing it is nothing but a bridge to communism, which is total government control over even your most intimate private life. Socialism at its best is corrupt, rotten to the core, a government without overseers. The idea of socialism is not new in the United States, but it is not openly identified as such in the places that it exists. If you live nearby, drove through, or perhaps live in the projects, you have seen and experienced socialism in America. Government housing, government health care, government schools, government food stamps, and what you see is